United States Constitution and Sharia are fundamentally at odds with one another.
Well, the reason why the United States Constitution and the Quran are at odds with each other is specifically because the ideologies that these two represent are entirely different. The United States Constitution represents Christian values, whereas the Quran is stuck back in the Dark Ages because of the Muslim ideology being so old that people in the Middle East had never even bothered to change it at all, because in the environments that they live in currently in the Middle East, they're so used to it. They're so used to the primitive survival and what we would know as the primitive lives that they live. They're not concerned about all of that because that's what they're used to. When you live in one country your whole life, or in this case, if you live in the Middle East your whole life, you start to get used to seeing those things as they are, and you never change until you go to the United States and you realize, holy shit, their ideology is different from mine, and I choose to assimilate to the United States and everything else. The things that I might get away with in the Middle East, I won't be able to get away with in the United States. Because our laws are based off of Christian values that Western people have believed and continue to believe and are fighting for even now. And the other thing that you have to remember is you got a whole lot of Islamic terror groups out there throwing gays off of buildings, and you have Muslim people in the Middle East fleeing the Middle East because of all the tyranny that they had to witness and coming here to America. But then you also have the same Islamic terrorists who are also coming into this country illegally and not assimilating to American customs and American laws and values, and yet somehow our own government, the corrupt politicians in our own government, in our own government let these radical Islamic terrorists into our country with free health care benefits, SNAP benefits, and all that. But then we have homeless veterans who, even though they are on EBTs and stuff like that, they're getting screwed over by the people in our government because Congress doesn't care about us. It never has. Congress will always care more about foreigners than they ever will about us. That's just the plain truth of the matter. With that, and you also have to figure that the Western people and the Middle East will always be at odds with each other because their ideologies are too distinctly different. And not only that, hell, when has the Bible ever called for assassinations of anyone of any person that was different from them? When has any Christian ever tried to assassinate another person because of them being Muslim? That has never happened, not even once. Not even once did that ever happen. Because Christian people nowadays, if there was one important thing that was taught in the homes of the families of Christian religious beliefs, it is to value life, to have the value in life. The Muslim Quran does not teach that. It teaches conquest through domination and enforcing your religious will upon other people's by forcing them to follow your beliefs under the threat of punishment of death. That's the reason why in the Middle East, if you commit adultery, they could stone you to death in public. Whereas here, you just go to jail, and you go to court, and they give you a fair trial and stuff like that. In the Middle East, they don't do that, and it just goes to show that we as American citizens in this great country, we don't even realize just how good we have it here in this country. And my mom and dad would know this because they've been to Korea. They were stationed in Korea when they served in the army in I think it was the early 90s. And yeah, those Koreans don't mess around. You protest the government in South Korea, they will literally open up fire hoses on your ass. They don't mess around. And they're still technically at war with North Korea. So yeah, that just goes to show just how good we have it here in the States, that we could say whatever the fuck we want and do whatever the fuck we want, and it's not an offense against the government that we could be whisked away in a van for, and it certainly is not an offense against the government to the point where armed men with rifles could be aiming said rifles at the backs of our heads, execution style World War honorities. In other countries, you do that same shit that you do here in America. In those other countries, especially China, they can literally execute you for that, for saying something, for literally just bad-mouthing the government. That's just, we Americans got to wake up, and we Americans really have to wake up, because this is actually happening, whether we realize it or not. This is exactly what's happening. And as I said before, it just goes to show that we Americans, whether we realize it or not, we have it so good in this country. We have it so good in this country, it's not even funny. We have it so good in this country that other people from other countries are literally fleeing those other countries to come here, assimilate here because they want to create better lives here. Because they actually want to go through the process of being an American. Hope you guys wake up to this. Like, comment, and be sure to subscribe.